Hello there, very good evening and welcome to Government in Transition. I'm your host, Eddy Layne. I'm joined this evening by Joe Hamilton, a candidate of the People's Progressive Party, as well as Sonia Pariag. She's also a candidate of the PPC and an attorney at law by profession. Joe, Sonia, good evening and welcome to the program.
Hi, Eddy. Good evening, Sonia. Good evening, viewers. Good evening.
Good evening, Eddy. Good evening, Joe, and good evening to all the viewers.
All right, so I want to dig straight into this, and I want to start tonight. And I guess both of you have been observing, as well as our viewers, would have been observing what has been happening in recent days. And if you recognize Joe, Sonia, the desperation in the cabal has gotten worse. And I think I said this about last week, that as we get closer to the end, as we get closer to the CCJ's ruling, and as we get closer to GCOM making a declaration, you will find that the absurdity, the craziness, the desperation will increase in the cabal, and we've seen it. But I want to start with the foolish attempt at propaganda today by the cabal, and what was even more foolish is that it was shared by the mere utensil, Joe Harmon. I don't want to get mixed up with Joe Hamilton and Joe Harmon here, right? So I have to be careful. That a team, inclusive of the General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party, Dr. Jagdeo, Jerry Govaya, Ramesh Duku, and I don't know who else, left on a flight from Ogle. By the way, our airspaces are closed, right?
Yes.
They left on a flight from Ogle to Trinidad to intimidate, to have discussions, to try to convince the CCJ to rule in favor of the PPP. Joe, the level of craziness, these people are mad, as simply put.
The thing is, Eddy, every day they give new powers to Barra Jagdeo. And so today they give powers to Jagdeo that he and associates are able to teleport to Trinidad and back to Guyana. So Jagdeo now he is now Captain Kirk in Star Wars, because the fact that the gentlemen they are here, I saw Jerry was having breakfast with his wife, and it shows how crazy these people are. Secondly, Armand is the CEO of the COVID-19 task force, and the fact that he can promote that Jagdeo and whoever has gone or went to Trinidad, it shows how desperate, and in their desperation and lies, it is total foolishness. I mean, they say things that in 2 seconds or a couple minutes, you can get the facts about the matter. But they just say these things. Now, so the General Secretary is not just Captain Kirk, he is able to impress and influence, as they suggest, the CCJ, like they have suggested. He has been able to influence all the diplomatic community, the Secretary General of Commonwealth and CARICOM chair and everybody else. If you are in government de facto and all of these things the opposition can do and we have the power to do, you also are saying that you're just useless. Because if you're responsible for the COVID task force, if you're responsible for the civil aviation, and everything that happens, and we are able, out of government at the moment, to exercise all these powers, then you could imagine what they're saying. Last week, if you recall, they attempted to suggest that we have some grand scheme for some coup and to kidnap David Granger and all kinds of foolishness. I mean, who comes up with these things that is so silly that even though it's serious, you have to laugh at it? And that is what is happening. And I suppose in the next 72 hours, we are likely to see more madness being said, because they are confident, like we are, that a declaration will be made, a declaration has to be made, and that declaration can only be made that Irfan Ali has been elected the president of the Cooperative Republic. They are as confident as we are. And that is the reason why they are getting so desperate.
Eddy, I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Sonia, I'll bring you in here to get your comment. But I suspect you didn't sign up for this kind of craziness, huh?
I don't think any Guyanese, any of the international community, any of the international organization, I think it's quite unfortunate because we are being laughed at such a level. It's amazing. But what I wanted to say, I mean, this reminds me of someone who has been under anesthesia and is coming out of anesthesia, and they're just delirious. They speak whatever, absolutely random things that are not in touch with reality. So you're right. As we get down to the declaration, this is going to get crazier. But I don't think that Guyanese are surprised at the level of propaganda that is coming out of the mouths of these persons in the APNU-AFC camp. What surprises me, though, is that a man who is an attorney and has been the head of the Ministry of Presidency comes out and makes these statements that are completely untrue and are on the, I mean, he's lost all of his marbles to be saying all of these things. They are quite far-fetched and out of touch with reality completely. The other thing is that I wanted to say is that, again, in the words of Mia Motley, the truth hurts. And what they want to do is hang on to power at any cost. So as they know that the truth is far removed from what they are saying, they continue to say it because they want to hold on to power. So that's all it is. But we want to reassure Guyanese that the things that are coming out of their mouths are not true. I mean, the latest attempt that we have seen at desperation is that, yes, the GS for the opposition was flown overseas in the company of Jerry Gavaya and another. And this is all to go and influence the CCJ. This is a Caribbean court with a high level of standard that will not take influence from anyone. And yet this is what is being spewed by the APNU. It could only be that they are delirious and they know that the end is coming soon.
Importantly too, Eddy, is that the world is so technologically advanced that people run multi-billion-dollar businesses, don't even have to travel. It is done via technologies like we are using tonight to communicate. And so people are able to influence people all around the world. Governments are able to negotiate, to make contact, to influence other people. And nobody jumps on a plane to travel and go someplace to influence somebody because of the technological advances that we have. And so it is lunacy. It is not propaganda anymore, you know, that you have to go on a plane to influence someone if you want to influence them. Secondly, why would we want to influence the CCJ? We sent our lawyers there to have a conversation with the CCJ and present our case before them. And for us, that is where, if quote unquote, the influencing of the court do happen in the courtroom, not outside of the courtroom. And, you know, it's like people who have larceny in the art, they normally accuse other people because apparently they are aware how they operate and how they function. And they think that everybody function that way. Why would we want to issue, to go and influence? The other important issue for viewers is that the matter before the CCJ, in large measure, has nothing to do with the declaration of the results. Has nothing to do with what the results are. Everyone is aware what the results of the March 2nd, 2020 elections, what it is. The People's Progressive Party garnered 233,000 votes, and Granger and his cabal garnered 217,000 odd votes. And therefore, according to the Constitution, the person who got the most votes is deemed to be president. So why we have to influence or attempt to, as I understand it, and Sonia would know more than I do being an attorney, that the CCJ is to deal with a matter that was before the Court of Appeal that spoke to trying to insert a word into the Constitution and whether they have jurisdiction to review the matter that went before the before the Court of Appeal and the decision they made. The relief that Eslyn David asked for, trying to prohibit the CEO and the chairperson and GCOM from making a declaration, those relief, they were not granted by the Court of Appeal. So the thing is that the CCJ decision on Wednesday, whilst it is important to settle, as I understand it from the lawyers, to settle legal matters that might be in confusion and contradiction today, it has no bearing in large measure on the declaration of the results, and that declaration will come, it has to come.
But Joe, the thing is, you know, when you look at all this madness and this propaganda that they're attempting, my concern is, and when I look at what they wrote, it is also a serious matter because they're trying to tarnish the character, the reputation of these judges, like they did with everybody else. They did a whole program today attacking Ralph Gonsalves because of the Leah confusion that they have there, you know? So their agenda somehow, I don't know what they intend to achieve by doing this, but their intention is to tarnish the character and or assassinate the character and you know, smear people's reputation as they go along. And this clearly shows a desperate cabal and also show or speaks to that saying that saying that we know, when a cow goes to the slaughterhouse, what happens? And this is exactly where they are. Because as much as it's funny, it's something laughable, you have to look at the fact that they're trying to say that we're attempting to influence the judges and somehow give the impression as though these judges are not people of good standing, that they can be influenced. We have to look at it that way. I don't know what they're trying to achieve, but we have to look at it from that perspective. Sonia?
Yes, well, we have seen from quite a while ago with the no confidence motion and so on that they have absolutely no regard for the rule of law. They have disrespect coming out from every corner of that camp as it relates to anything that does not conform to their views. So once you have, as a matter of fact, the entire, and it's really a disservice to their supporters because they're speaking to really a very small fraction of what Guyana is. And they seem to forget that they will have elections in another 5 years or whenever the president is sworn in. From that day on, they will have another 5 years, another election. And they're really doing a disservice to themselves because they are selling a storyline that is completely out of touch with reality and saying to these people that everybody of good standing and of a high level of performance and quality, that they amount to nothing.
What is important, though, in all of this, Eddy, is that we know that serious people don't take them seriously. that is important in everything that is happening here. That
which is the larger
serious
portion.
people don't take them seriously. In the case of the Caribbean political leadership and business class, professional class, what they see Granger as now, not as a president anymore, they see him as a sanctimonious gangster. So they don't take him seriously. The other day, Ralph Gonzalez coined a phrase for these people, talking about assorted jaundice view or something like that.
Assorted jaundice sources.
Right. So the point I'm making is that you would note, and Sonia just mentioned, Miyamoto give them a swipe and a swat by saying the truth hurts and moved on. So it is where we're at now. No person of substance, whether in the Caribbean or further afield or in Guyana, is debating with the cabal because they don't take them seriously. I am told this afternoon, Ramjatan was on some program, and he is suggesting that the diplomatic community is silent because they recognize that the elections are fraud. And the international community is silent because they will not speak to you anymore or about you, because they recognize you are useless. Ramjatan and Granger and the cabal, what they will do with you is act if you impede the democratic process in this country. They stop talking to you. And so you saying this, they're silent, they're acting, they have started to act. So they don't have to speak to you anymore, they have spoken to you enough. And everyone that speaks now, they don't speak about an election, they don't speak about voting, they don't speak about a recount happening. They speak about a declaration must be done based on the recount results. That is where we're at. So I'm told also, Eddy, a couple yesterday or something, imagine Hamilton Green comes out to speak about rig elections. I mean, how you can, this cannot be more laughable. Imagine Hamilton Green has come out in 2020
speak about rig elections.
Guyana.
Well, Joanna, there's nobody left, you know. There is nobody left to say anything that makes any sense. So they're pulling out whoever else they have in their hat. But to attack the judges of this caliber that represents the region, this is not a Guyana they're representing alone. They're representing the region, and to get to that level and then you're attacking them, absolutely nobody with intelligence or even with a shred of intelligence will take them seriously. So
not only taking them seriously. That is one of the issue. But I think what they are doing, and I hold this belief firmly for a very long time now. I think what they are basically doing is that they're setting the stage, Joe, with the hope that when the CCJ rules, they can blame somebody else for their failure. So they start the conversation about who's talking to the judges, who intends to do this with the judges, and who will bribe the judges, and who will influence the judges, because they know that they will fail. They know that, and you mentioned it earlier, that GCOM can only declare one thing, and that is to declare the 460,000 plus valid votes cast and declare the PPPC the winner of the elections. So all these different narratives, all these accusations and claims that they are making is because they're hoping somehow it will be enough to bring people out on the streets, maybe to have a repeat of what they did in 1997. But I believe that Guyanese are smart enough, because I was looking at the same letter, the same document that they posted about Jagdio and Govai and so on meeting with travel to Trinidad, and their supporters are asking them, but the airport is closed. How did they get out? Why would they go when they could have made a call? So the people who they're trying to influence are not stupid. This is not a Guyana of the 1970s and the 1980s that we read about, many of us, and that Joe, you lived through and you know about. People are smart, and people know that they're lying and that they're desperate. So I think all of this somehow is to trying to set the stage for when GCOM to make the declaration and declares the PPP the winner, that they can create some problems in the streets. That is my view. That is what I think they're trying.
Eddy, you mentioned 97. 97 is 23 years away. We're in 2020. That's the first point. The second point is that, as you just mentioned, the Guyanese people are not stupid. Large majority of the supporters of APNU-AFC, they know that their party lost the elections. The other important issue I always speak to is you have thousands of people who in 1997, they didn't have a home. They didn't have property. Through the initiatives of the People's Progressive Party, Civic, today they have ownership of homes. They have ownership of cars and other property. And therefore, I am confident that whatever stage they're setting will not be successful, cannot be successful. Because I always make the argument, when a man has a house, it is difficult for him to be influenced to go and burn Sonia's house because he knows he has a house. When a person they have a car, it is difficult to vandalize my car because they know they have a car also. And so ownership, that people have been able to acquire things over the period of governance of the People's Progressive Party Civic. That is one of the things that is responsible primarily for the APNU-AFC being unable to mobilize large amounts of people for mischief. And we have seen it over the period, beginning with no confidence motion, right up to this period, right up to the last week or whenever they tried to mobilize people. Added to that, people have their own difficulties they're faced with. Their own economic difficulties and financial difficulties brought on by the same government that they voted for in 2015. Many of them are unable to pay their mortgages. Many of them, they have already had their vehicles repossessed. Some of them are behind time in their mortgage, and banks have been patient. They have threatened foreclosure. Many persons now, the fact that their children are at home, it is more expensive to manage because the children are at home. Many persons, they have no jobs because the places they work at, they have scaled back or they have closed down their businesses. So people have their own difficulties, and this government has not been helpful as regards dealing with social security nets for the people in this COVID-19 period. And therefore, I'm confident that whatever they seek to plan or whatever they're attempting to do cannot be successful, will not be successful. The Guyanese people want to move on. They want to go ahead with taking care of their businesses and their children and their economic development. And they want this country to move forward and to progress so that they can be successful in the programs and plans that we have outlined during our campaign.
Sonia,
you know, Eddy, this is why I said earlier that they're only speaking to a very small fraction of persons, because as they open their mouth on a daily basis, the level of indecency and dishonesty keeps increasing, and they're losing ground with their supporters as we go along. So just a very small fraction of maybe the diehard supporters they still have, and those persons probably, it's either that they feel that they have deluded themselves enough to think that these persons are believing them, but it's a matter of, it really is a matter of the majority of Guyanese realizing that these people are not leadership quality. These persons cannot run this country, and they are for themselves sifting out what is right, what is wrong, what is accurate in terms of the information that they're receiving, and they're using their own logic to realize that everything that comes out of the mouth of the APNU members and the AFC members are delusional.
Well, I'm told also, Eddy, that Ramjatan again continues to spew this banality of during the campaign, how we had ads tailored for different communities. We would hope that the fact that we have reported these comments of Ramjatan for action by the Ethnic Relations Commission, we will hope that the Ethnic Relations Commission deals with this matter expeditiously, like they have dealt with so many other matters of persons making comments that are insightful and that are racist in content. We would hope that Ramjatan will not be treated as a sacred cow by the Ethnic Relations Commission. And the Ethnic Relations Commission will all Ramjatan before it the same way that they have done many other Guyanese, because he still continue to speak about the PPP. We had put out there ads that are tailored specifically, according to him, to Indian brothers and sisters, and some of the comments he has made suggest that the ads were saying that how only Indian can manage the oil money, and black people can't manage oil money and all that kind of thing. Yesterday on a program, and I'm doing it tonight again, I challenge Mr. Ramjatan or any one of the cabal, bring before the Guyanese people any one of these ads that you talk about. Prove us wrong.
We made that challenge the very first time he spoke about this, Joe, and we said, bring it.
Let him, and for the persons who we continue to spew that nonsense to, they must ask him also to produce this ad that is ads he's talking about.
Joe, I
And we know he
suspect
cannot produce any such ads because they don't exist. All the ads that the People's Progressive Party, Civic, produced and made available to the Guyanese people during the campaign, they're public ads. We had no specific ads tailored to anyone. We spoke to the Guyanese people about our programs and our plans that we have for them once elected. And so the Ethnic Relations, I am calling them out tonight. The Ethnic Relations Commission, we have seen acting 24 hours, 48 hours after people would have reported persons making comments on social media, and they have called them in to discuss and to rebuke them. We have written the Ethnic Relations Commission, and we hope that we don't have to write the Ethnic Relations Commission again, asking them to investigate and to deal with this matter that Mr. Ramjatan continued to speak about. And I'm told Nagamutu was on some program also. But the deviousness in this conversation, Eddy, is this. If you note, the two persons who are speaking specifically about this matter, it is only Ramjatan and Nagamutu. Because the intention is because they're Indians, they're likely to be more believable. And that is the deceit and the deviousness of this continued conversation. And we have debunked it, and we would continue to debunk it. And we are calling on the Ethnic Relations Commission to expedite this matter with Mr. Ramjatan, the same way they have done with other lesser mortals as we see it. Ramjatan must not be placed before the Guyanese people by the Ethnic Relations Commission as an untouchable or as a sacred cow. And we hope that members of the Ethnic Relations Commission, they are listening to this program tonight, and they can recognize how we feel about this matter, and they can deal with it very shortly.
But Joe, apart from the Ethnic Relations Commission, before you go, Sonia, I would also want to join you to call on the Guyana National Broadcasting Authority, because Ramjatan made these comments today on the radio station in Linden. They would have written to TV stations and radio stations for simple things like maybe calling Granger a dictator or
a charlatan.
And a charlatan. But Ramjatan is out there trying to sow discord, trying to pit one ethnic group against the other. Keep repeating this divisive rhetoric over and over and over. So I would also want to join to call on the GNBA. They have been very active when it comes to certain radio stations.
They have been very active against the PPP.
That's what I'm saying.
And against anti-Granger persons.
But I want to see if they are silent on this as well. But I believe, the problem with Ramjatan is that he spends a lot of time at the rum shops. And he tends to pick up everything that people say, the drinking bandits that they have there, people talk all sorts of things, and he run with them. And that is his problem. The problem is when he run with these things, what exactly it leads to is really, it tends to lead to division among our people. So that is the problem with him. Sonia.
Yes, Eddy. Well, I think Joe and yourself would have covered it quite well in relation to calling out the ERC and the GNBA. Now, the GNBA must act impartially. It must not act partially as we have seen that it's been acting recently, and not so recently, as a matter of fact, for quite some time now. It's been making issues with the PPPC. But it must act impartially as it comes to this because, and I will say this, from a legal point of view, this seems to be hate speech that is intended to incite racism. And at no point in time should this be any such comment by anyone. And Mr. Ramjatan is by no means excluded from this category. At no point, no material time should racism enter into the arena. We should not be creating a divided population at no point in time. We do not stand for that, and we will never stand for that. So the ERC it's necessary that the ERC takes action, as Joe said earlier, expeditiously, as they have been doing recently. And the GNBA needs to act impartially and call this out.
But you see, Sonia, the thing is, this is when, and this again is the desperation of this cabal. When they realize that everything that they tried to rig the election several times, they failed. They try, and so their only hope now is to try to divide our people, divide the people of this country along racial lines. And it seems as though Ramjutan and Nagamotu have now gotten themselves weaved into the fabric of the PNC.
Yes.
They have gotten themselves weaved into that fabric of spreading race hate, of pitting Indo-Guyanese against Afro-Guyanese, of attacking every ethnicity. They have gotten themselves into that.
And it's no less a hate speech coming from an Indian within the APNU-AFC. It is no less of what it is. That is what the nature of it is, and it doesn't change because it is said by Nagamotu or it is said by Ramjutan. And as a matter of fact, they are just digging a deeper hole for themselves, as far as I see.
But I want to address one more issue that I see before, because I want us to spend a few minutes at least to talk about the future. I think that is where we need to look at as a people. We need to look to the future, and we need to spend less time focusing on the garbage that comes out of Congress Place on a daily basis and the attacks. But I want to address an issue which they seem to be trying to sow confusion in the minds of people with regards to what Lowenfield did. In my view, what Lowenfield did was criminal. He committed a criminal act.
Fraud.
And that's all I see. Lowenfield, and you will know more than I do, Sonia, has absolutely no power to disenfranchise even a single person, let alone 115,000 people. They're using Article 177. I'm going to hand that straight over to you so that you can explain Lowenfield's role, his responsibilities, and where his powers, if there are any, derive from in the Constitution.
Well, what Article 177 says, and that is what they are running on, is that the commission shall act upon the advice of the CEO. But then, as I would have said this before, and I'm saying it again. Now, what does the word advice mean in that sense? Advice does not mean that you're going to have a perverse report based on your own opinions upon matters that are rightfully supposed to be in an elections petition, and of which you have absolutely no authority to act upon, and you put that into a report. The report becomes perverse, and you put it before the commission and says, well, here, you must act upon my advice. Advice in that sense does not mean that anything perverse that comes before the commission must act upon. Lowenfield, in his own words, in 2015, he would have said, and as a matter of fact, not 2015, it was in 2018 or 2019, sorry, 2019, he himself admitted that and explained it in detail, that he was subordinate to the commission, and that he is subject to the direction and control of the commission.
If you so desire, Sonia, I can run the video. If you so desire.
Yes, we have the video, but we also have Section 18 of the Elections Law Amendment Act of 2000, which states, and allow me to just quickly read this: the Chief Elections Officer and the Commissioner of the Registration shall, it does not say may, shall, notwithstanding anything in any written law, be subject to the direction and control of the commission. He wants to go back and use the paramountcy of the Constitution to say that Article 177 says that they must accept anything I put before them as my advice. Advice cannot mean something that is perverse. It cannot mean that. And it does not, it is not intended to mean that. Parliament did not intend that when they had the Constitution enacted. So
advice, Eddy, can be illegality and perversion. I mean, it's as simple as that. And what's the Barbados PM said it rightly. She said, and she's a senior counsel, she says, by what executive fiat this CEO thinks he can dispose of one vote, much less 115,000 votes. And that is she's in Barbados and she understands clearly. And you have Mr. Ramjatan, apparently either drunk or half drunk this afternoon, seeking to suggest that the chairperson must, and the commission must accept whatever Layne brings before them. And it shows the nonsense in it, because Vincent Alexander was clear several times over the period. He has been mentioning about the commission rejecting a report coming to them by the chief elections officer before Layne was appointed chief elections officer. So they're very much aware, and they know, and Ramjatan must know. He knows that the fact that he is arguing that 177 can be utilized the way Layne thinks he can. And you know what is important? If Layne believes and he thinks he did not do anything wrong, why he didn't show up at the courthouse? I mean, if you were of the view that I did nothing illegal, I did nothing wrong, you would be the first person waiting for the magistrate to arrive with your lawyers. But if instead of that, he has been hiding and running and sleeping at different residences so as not to receive the documents from the marshal. And now we hope that the police can find him, because the court, the magistrate has now ordered that he be served. So a man who is confident that he has not committed an illegality would not be hiding and ducking and running. But Ramjatan is hoping, as he said some time ago, that he believes somehow, some way, they can retain power via a technicality. Power ain't got technicality, power is the ballot box.
The man said today he's optimistic Granger is going to be sworn in shortly.
It is the votes of the citizens that will determine who gets power and who don't get power. And the whole world recognizes that. Most of Guyana recognizes that, even supporters of the APNU-AFC. I saw one goodly gentleman who always spoke glowingly of David Granger and how decent and a good man he is. One GHK Lal today, pleading and begging his soulmate, David Granger, to concede, to bring this to an end. You know, I saw the other one, Eddy, you would know him more than I do, living overseas, always used to be on Facebook cussing out the PPP. I saw him conceding. So the point is, some of the most radical and rabid anti-PPP types, they have reached the stage whereby they recognize that this got to come to an end. You have to bring it to an end, and the faster you bring it to an end, it is better for us. And for us, Eddy, whilst we are doing programs that say transition, APNU-AFC, they're still doing programs about the recount. They're still at the convention center. We are talking now about getting into government and being able to execute the programs and plans that we put before the Guyanese people at the election campaign, at the campaign for the March 2nd, 2020 election.
You know, Eddy, I just wanted to go back and in relation to Lowenfield's report being perverse and illegal. Now, it stands to reason that the chairwoman would have, on the 16th of June, she would have issued her decision and reasons why GCOM could not pronounce upon the validity of the elections. And that is because Article 163 of the Constitution gives exclusive powers to the High Court to deal with the specific issues upon which Lowenfield is seeking to justify his report. Now, if the chairwoman is saying that GCOM does not have the power to do that, Lowenfield, being a statutory officer of GCOM, by extension, does not have the power to carry out an investigation. He's not a trial body to carry out a trial as it relates to the validity of the elections. So therefore, he cannot do what he did unilaterally so as to put a perverse or put his own opinion into a report, making it perverse at the same time, deducting and increasing numbers in favor of the incumbent, which on the common law fraud, that captures what he has done. And that is where the illegality comes. So by saying all of that, the commission therefore does not have to act upon what he considers to be his advice.
Okay, I'm muted here again. I keep muting but Joe, you touched briefly there on us moving forward, because I think Guyanese have come to the realization that all they're hearing from the cabal, pure propaganda, lies, attempts to sow seeds of discord, attempts to divert attention from what Lowenfield was doing, and all sorts of things. But like you said, Joe, Guyanese want to move forward. Guyanese want to get their lives back together so that they can, look at the future. So the faster this comes to an end, it is better not just for the PPP, but for all Guyanese, regardless of who you voted for. Because at the end of the day, the People's Progressive Party, Civic, has prepared a plan, a program, with every single Guyanese in mind. The PPPC has promised 50,000 jobs within the next 5 years. And the faster we get to work, we can start working on creating those opportunities for the people of this country. Unemployment in this country has been skyrocketing over the last 5 years. The PPP has promised to create house lots, thousands of house lots, tens of thousands of house lots for Guyanese. And the faster the party gets into office, Dr. Abysmally is sworn in, we can begin the process of creating those house lots, and not to give 10, 15, 20, 200 acres to cronies like what Harman and the others are doing until now, but to rather give those lands to the poor people of this country so that the dream of owning a home can become a reality.
Importantly, Eddy, is that before the elections, as viewers would know, when we put forward our programs and our plans for the Guyanese people, COVID-19 was not with us. Today, COVID-19 is with us. And therefore, one of the urgent matters that we have to address in government is how we respond effectively to this pandemic, because this cabal has not been doing a good job. They have been caught up so much in attempting to rig elections that both the chairperson, Nagamutu, and the CEO, Harman, they have failed the Guyanese people in this regard. Because whilst you have all the CARICOM nations. They have flattened the curve and they have had a decline of infection. Guyana, we are increasing daily our infection rate. And it must suggest that this cabal is not doing what should be done, like to be successful, like has happened in the other countries. Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica, the smaller islands, many of them today, they have no one infected with the COVID-19 virus. Barbados, to help them in their health program, they brought in 100 doctors from Cuba to help them. And that contributed to them flattening the curve rapidly. When they did lockdown, they put in place social assistance measures to help the people whilst they are not able to work or to go out as much as they normally were accustomed to. And that we have to, of course, we have a task force at the level of the party, but that is something that is new upon us that we would have to execute, and that would have to become part of our program when we get into government. Because if you're following what is happening in many parts of the country, there is a rapid increase of infection, and you have in the last 2 weeks or thereabout, we have had 3 or 4 more persons die from COVID-19, and that elderly people, young people. The teacher from Letem is less than 30 years old, I think 26.
25.
The guy 25. From Bartica is 36 years old. The guy from, I think, Alboistam, who died a couple of weeks, is 42. So the last 2 weeks, 4 persons have died, and the infection rate has skyrocketed rapidly. I think if we follow, we're now, I think, 254 persons infected. Just a month ago, we were at least half of that, I think. So in 1 month, the infection rate in Guyana has increased by at least 100%. And the death rate has increased at least by 1/3 over the period. In the same period, as I said, when all our Caribbean brothers and sisters, they have had a decline of infection, and many of them that had infection, no deaths occurred from people who were infected. And that is something we have to deal with urgently once and when we get into government very shortly.
Sonia.
Eddy, it's an understatement to say that Guyanese have not been, they have been traumatized. It's an understatement to say that they've been traumatized and drained from everything that's been happening from the day of elections to now. And they've been hit, and we've been hit with a double whammy in terms of the elections lasting this long and what we've gone through in terms of the election and the COVID-19. Then recently we would have found out that there is no money left in the reserve and that the country is in heavy debt. So that does not help the situation. Guyanese is seeing the bigger picture as to what the future would be like on that dictatorship. And all they want is to have their lives comfortable, and they want a prosperous lives for themselves and their children. Now, our manifesto has shown the country that otherwise we wouldn't have gotten more votes. No, this is, and our manifesto was created to help each and every Guyanese prosper. That is what, at the end of the day, they want. Now, the country is handicapped, as we have seen, because we do not have a government. We do not have a legitimate government. We no longer have a caretaker government. And we are severely handicapped, and Guyanese are realizing that if we go down the road of having the incumbents stay there in power, we are going to suffer even more, because we're not going to have the relations that we have in terms of the economic trades. We will not be able to access the oil money that can help us as we need help right now. And they are very well aware of that. So the faster that we get Dr. Irfaan sworn in and we have a democratically appointed government, the faster that we can move towards having every Guyanese be able to live a comfortable life and put the country in a position with which it was before and to move forward. So I do believe that the chairwoman of the commission is very well aware of what the country will suffer should we go down a road of a perverse path, rather. So I do believe that GCOM, at the end of the day, the chairwoman will do the right thing, because we need a democratically appointed government in order to have the future that we have been wanting for so long.
Sonia, Joe, I want to thank both of you for joining me this evening. Unfortunately, our time has expired, and we have to bring an end to our discussions here this evening. But Joe, I want to close using your very words that all of this can only end one way, and that is democracy winning at the end of all the madness that is going on with the APNU-AFC, and the PPPC being declared the winner officially. I think everybody already know that the PPP won the elections. It's just for formally GCOM to do its part in terms of the declaration, and that Dr. Irfaan can be sworn in and appoint his cabinet and begin working for the people of Guyana so that their lives can be improved in the coming months and years ahead. So again, Joe, Sonia, I want to thank both of you for joining me this evening. And to our viewers, we want to say thanks for being part of this program. We're going to be back here tomorrow to keep you updated as to what is happening in our country with regard
Thank you and good night.
All right, thank you. Good night. Good night.